Hi everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Horror Stories. Tonight, we're diving into chilling tales that blur the line between reality and nightmare. Some of these stories come from real experiences, others from legends whispered in the dark. So grab a seat, turn down the lights, and get ready, because once the story begins, you might not want to be alone. If you want to support the channel, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps keep these chilling tales alive. Okay, if you're ready, let's step into tonight's terrifying stories. My name is Mark, and for 20 years, my life has been the Black Pine Reserve. I know the smell of the earth after a summer rain, the way the mist clings to the hollows in the morning, the exact grove where the ravens nest. This park isn't my workplace, it's my home, and you get to know the sounds of your home. You know what's normal. That's why I knew, from the very first report, that something was wrong. It was late last autumn, time of year when the light gets thin and the shadows grow long by mid-afternoon. A hiker stumbled into the main ranger station, his face the color of old ashes. He was a fit-looking guy in his 30s, but he was breathing like he'd run a marathon, and his hands wouldn't stop shaking. I got him a blanket and a cup of sweet tea, the way we're trained to do for shock. He'd been on the Cedar Loop, he said, an easy, well-marked trail that a child could follow. He was almost halfway around when he heard it, a whistle. It was a simple, wandering little tune, just a few notes, like someone idly whistling while they walked. He thought nothing of it, maybe another hiker just out of sight, but after a few minutes, he realized he hadn't seen a trail marker in a while. He stopped. The whistling stopped. The forest was dead silent. That's when the fear first touched him, he said. It was a silence that felt heavy, like a blanket smothering the world. Then the whistle started again, this time from his left, off the trail. It sounded closer, hoping to find his way back to the path, or at least find another person. He pushed through some brush toward the sound. The trail, he swore, just wasn't there anymore. In its place was a wall of ancient, gnarlthorn bushes, thick and dark, that looked like they'd been growing there for 100 years. And the whistling was coming from right behind them. It didn't sound idle anymore. It sounded like it was waiting for him. He panicked, turned, and ran blindly until he tripped over a root and landed hard. When he looked up, he was sprawled across the Cedar Loop trail, the afternoon sun dappling through the familiar pines. The whistling was gone. I wrote it in the logbook. Hiker. Mild disorientation. Probable dehydration. I'm a practical man. I believed he believed the story, but the woods can play tricks on you. Then, a week later, a couple on the Maple Ridge Trail reported the same thing. A whistle tune that led them into a part of the forest they didn't recognize, where the GPS on their phones went completely dead. They only found their way back when they started singing loudly to themselves, drowning out the sound. A month after that, a lone backpacker. His story was identical. The tune, the wrong turn, the impossible geography. We started marking these incidents on our big topographical map in the office. My boss, Sarah, a no-nonsense woman who'd been here even longer than me, stared at the pins we'd placed. They formed a rough but unmistakable circle deep in the park, centered on a place we called the Blackwood Basin, a steep, bowl-shaped valley with no official trails running through it. It was difficult, dangerous terrain, and we'd always just left it alone. Close it, Sarah said, her voice leaving no room for argument. Post the area. No entry. We don't need the liability. So last week, I shouldered a pack full of no-entry signs, hammer, and a roll of bright orange warning tape. My job was to mark the perimeter of the basin, following the line our pins had drawn on the map. The day was still and quiet. Too quiet. The usual chatter of squirrels and birds was absent. I felt a prickle on the back of my neck, the feeling of being watched. I shook it off. Nerves. I'd been listening to too many stories. I was deep in the old growth, where the trees are so tall they block out the sky, when I heard it. It was a whistle, the same simple, five-note tune the hiker had described. It was clear and sharp in the silent air, and it was close, maybe 30 paces ahead, just around a bend in the game trail I was following. My training took over. "Hello," I called out, my voice too loud in the stillness. "This is Park Ranger Mark. Do you require assistance?" The whistling stopped. The silence that rushed back in was deafening, a physical pressure on my eardrums. I stood there frozen, listening so hard my head hurt. Then it started again. This time, it was right behind my left shoulder. I spun around, my heart hammering against my ribs. There was nothing there, just trees and shadows. The sound hadn't moved. It was as if the source had simply teleported from in front of me to behind me without making a sound. The tune repeated. It was the same notes, but the tone was different. It was no longer idle. It was impatient. It was a demand. "Follow me." A cold dread, pure and primal, washed over me. This wasn't hiker. This was something else. I looked down at my feet, at the game trail I'd been following. It was gone. Not overgrown, not hidden. Just gone. The mossy forest floor was unbroken. The sun, which had been to my right, was now directly in front of me, casting long, strange shadows that pointed like accusing fingers into the heart of the Blackwood Basin. The whistling came again, from deep within those shadows. An invitation I knew, with every fiber of my being, I must not accept. I did the only thing I could think of. It was against every instinct of a ranger. To close your eyes in the wilderness is to invite danger. But I knew the danger wasn't in what I could see. It was in what I could hear. I squeezed my eyes shut, clamped my hands over my ears, and I ran. I didn't run toward the whistling. I didn't run toward the sun. I ran in the direction my body remembered coming from. I ran with my eyes closed, crashing through low branches, stumbling over unseen logs, feeling thorns rip at my clothes. I didn't care. I just ran, blinded by fear and my own eyelids. My shoulder slammed into something hard and unforgiving. Pain exploded down my arm. I fell to the ground and my eyes flew open. I was lying at the base of one of our own official trail marker signs for the Maple Ridge Path. I was scraped, bleeding, and my uniform was torn. But I was on a known trail. The oppressive silence was gone, replaced by the normal sounds of the forest. A bird chirped somewhere. The wind sighed in the high branches. The whistling was gone. I still put up the signs. I hammered them into trees with a violence that surprised me, wrapping the orange tape around and around like a protective barrier. But now, when my patrol route takes me near the edge of that circle on the map, I keep my radio volume low, and I listen. I'm always listening for a simple, tuneless melody that sounds like it's whistling just for me, waiting for me to forget which way is home. There's no feeling in the world quite like the cold jolt that goes through a ranger station when the call comes in. A child is missing. The controlled panic is immediate. Every second is a lifetime. Every minute a mile of dangerous terrain. 2 summers ago, that call was for a 7-year-old girl named Lily. She'd been on a picnic with her family by the shores of Lake Greystone, chasing butterflies one moment and gone the next. Within 20 minutes, we had a full-scale search and rescue operation mobilized. We set up a command post, organized volunteer teams, and started grid searches. The first few hours are the most critical. My team was assigned the ravine area, a beautiful but treacherous section of the park, full of steep slopes, hidden crevices, and thick brush. It's a place a small, frightened child could easily hide in or worse, fall into. My team was me and 3 volunteers. Tom, a big, cheerful ex-firefighter, Sarah, a nurse who knew first aid, and Ben, a quiet university student who was an experienced backpacker. We moved slowly, calling Lily's name, our voices echoing through the quiet trees. We peered under every bush, behind every rock. The mood was tense, focused, but hopeful. We'd been at it for over an hour, sweat soaking through our shirts, when Tom held up a hand. "Shoo, Listen, was that? We all froze. And then we heard it. A faint rustling up ahead, and a flash of color. A bright, electric pink. The exact color of the jacket Lily's parents said she was wearing. "Lily," Tom yelled, his voice full of relief. "Lily, honey, we're here. We're rangers. We're gonna take you back to your mom and dad." The figure in pink didn't turn. It didn't call back. It just kept walking, about 50 meters ahead of us, moving at a steady pace away from the lake, deeper into the deepest, most rugged part of the ravine. "She must be in shock," Sarah whispered, her nurse's training kicking in. "She might not even hear us." "Let's go carefully," I said, my own heart lifting. We had her. We were going to bring her home. We quickened our pace, hurrying down the slope, keeping the flash of pink in our sights. It never got closer, but it never got further away. It was like a lure, drawing us onward. In the intensity of the chase, I fell into a ranger's habit, a constant head count. I needed to make sure my team was safe, that no one else got hurt in the difficult terrain. I glanced back. Tom was right behind me, his face set with determination. Sarah was next, checking her medical kit as she walked. Ben was behind her, looking a little pale, but keeping up. And behind Ben, there was a fourth man. I did a double take. He was dressed in normal hiking gear, khaki pants, sturdy boots, a dark green jacket. His head was down, a baseball cap pulled low over his face. He must be a volunteer from another team, I thought, who saw us and joined the line to help. It happens. In the chaos of a search, people merged together. But something felt off. Why wasn't he calling out Lily's name? Why was his head down like that? He moved with a strange, fluid grace, not struggling with the uneven ground at all. He just glided. "Lily, we're coming." Tom called again, his voice starting to get hoarse. The little figure in pink didn't respond. It just kept walking, drawing us deeper into a part of the ravine where the trees grew so close together they blocked out the sun. I looked back again, my unease growing. Tom, Sarah, Ben, and the silent man. I counted them off. 1, 2, 3, 4. "Hey," I said, raising my voice to be heard by the guy at the back. I tried to sound casual, not wanting to spook anyone. "Hey, buddy, which team are you with?" "Carlson's group." No answer. He didn't look up. He didn't break his stride. He just kept walking, his movements a perfect, silent mirror of our own. The cold feeling in my stomach turned to ice. I looked ahead at the girl. She was still there, a beacon of pink in the deepening gloom. I looked back at my team. Tom, Sarah, Ben, and the thing that was not a man. "Stop," I yelled, my voice cracking with a fear I couldn't control. Everyone stop. Now. My team jerked to a halt, turning to look at me with confused, startled faces. All of them. Tom, Sarah, Ben, and the man in the green jacket. He stopped too. And then, with a slow, deliberate motion that made my blood run cold, he lifted his head. The bill of his cap shadowed his face, but I could see enough. His skin was waxy and pale like old cheese. And it was smooth, completely smooth. Where his eyes should have been, there were only shallow dips. Where his nose and mouth should have been, there was nothing. Just a blank, unfinished expanse of flesh. He wasn't looking at me. He wasn't looking at any of us. His featureless face was pointed straight past me, focused entirely on the little girl in the pink jacket ahead of us. At that moment, the figure in pink stopped walking, and slowly, ever so slowly, it began to turn around. I didn't wait to see its face. I didn't think. I screamed, and it wasn't a ranger's command. It was a raw, primal shriek of terror. Back to the trail. Now, don't look back. Run. We ran. We crashed back through the brush, scrambling up the slope we'd just come down, tripping, falling, helping each other up, driven by a blind, animal panic. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. I just ran until my lungs burned and the trees thinned out, and we burst onto the main lakeside trail, collapsing in a heap of gasping, sobbing relief. The radio on my belt crackled to life. Base to all teams. Stand down. Repeat, stand down. The child has been found. She was asleep under a fallen log near the picnic area. She is safe and unharmed. We sat there on the ground, trembling, not speaking. The real Lily had been less than a kilometer from her parents the entire time. She had never been in the ravine. I never told her parents what we saw. What would I have said? I filed my report, describing our fruitless search of the ravine. I mentioned a fourth volunteer who became separated from us, but listed him as unidentified. My boss, after a long, quiet conversation with me where I told him everything, classified it as a mass stress-induced hallucination. It's a neat, tidy explanation, but I know what I saw, and I know, with a certainty that haunts my dreams, that the thing that followed us wasn't there to help us find Lily. It was following her, and we, in our desperation, were leading it right to her. The Lookout Point Station is the most remote outpost in the entire park system. It's not much. A single-room cabin with a wood stove, a basic kitchenette, a bunk, and the most important thing, a powerful radio for communicating with the main base across the vast, silent valleys. Pulling a weekly shift there is a rite of passage for rangers. It's a week of solitude, of breathtaking sunsets, and of profound, sometimes unsettling quiet. You learn a lot about yourself up there. Last winter, I learned something about the park I never wanted to know. The shift started normally. I'd stock firewood, check the radio, and watch the weather report. A storm was coming, but it was just a typical winter blow. Nothing the sturdy little cabin hadn't weathered 100 times before. I was wrong. By nightfall, the storm wasn't just a storm, it was a fury. The wind wasn't blowing, it was screaming, tearing at the shingles on the roof like a thing with claws. Snow wasn't falling, it was flying horizontally, a solid white wall that erased the world outside the windows. Then the lights flickered and died. The power line was down. No matter. I lit the gas lantern, and its warm, hissing light filled the room, pushing the darkness back. Then the phone line went dead with a soft, final click. Annoying, but not critical. I still had the radio. I called it in. Lookout Point to base. Storm's a big one. Power and phone are down. Over. The response was crackly with static. Copy that, Lookout. Sit tight. We'll check in the morning. Then the radio died too. Not with a crackle, but with a sickening, descending whine that faded into nothingness. I clicked the handset over and over. Dead air. The storm's electromagnetic interference had killed my last lifeline. I was truly alone. Cut off. It was just me, the howling wind, and the circle of light from my lantern. I remember feeling a spike of anxiety, which I quickly shoved down. This was my job. I was a park ranger. I could handle one night. I stoked the wood stove, made a cup of tea on its surface, and tried to read a book, but it was impossible to concentrate. The cabin groaned and shuddered with every gust of wind. It felt like being adrift in a very small, very vulnerable boat on a raging sea. Then I heard it. A knock. It was low and heavy. It came from the front door. My first, overwhelming emotion was relief. Another person, a hiker caught in the storm. They must be freezing. I felt a surge of professional duty. Shoving my own fear aside, I grabbed the lantern and hurried to the door. Hello, I yelled over the wind. Who's out there? The only answer was another series of knocks. They were slower this time, more deliberate. Hold on, I'm coming. I shouted. I undid the heavy iron bolt. It scraped loud in the room, and pulled the solid oak door open, fighting against the wind that tried to slam it shut. The porch was empty. The storm roared in my face, driving stinging needles of snow into the room. I held the lantern high, its light cutting a feeble swath through the blinding white chaos. I leaned out, looking left and right. There was no one, nothing, and there were no footprints. The porch had a thick, fresh layer of unbroken snow. It was as if the wind itself had formed a fist and knocked. A cold trickle of fear, colder than the wind, traced its way down my spine. I quickly closed the door, bolted it, and leaned against it, my heart starting to pound. A branch, I told myself. It had to be a branch blown by the wind. It was the only logical explanation. I returned to my chair, but I couldn't sit still. I stood by the stove, listening intently. The wind screamed. The cabin creaked. I jumped. This time, the knocking wasn't on the door. It was on the window pane, right next to my head. So loud, so violent, that the glass rattled in its frame. I spun around. The lantern held before me like a weapon. Pressed against the cold glass was a hand. It was pale, almost gray, and wet with melting snow. The fingers were long and thin, too long, but it was the skin that made my stomach clench. It wasn't right. It looked wrong. It was smooth and shiny, like the skin on a boiled sausage, and it was stretched taut over the bones beneath. There were no wrinkles, no knuckle lines, no fingerprints. As I watched, frozen in horror, the hand slid slowly down the glass. It didn't leave a clear print. It left a thick, muddy smear, like dirt mixed with rotting leaves. Then it was gone. I stood there, breath held, waiting. The wind howled. The knocking started again. But now it wasn't in one place. It was everywhere. Knocks on the back window. Knocks on the other side window. A rapid, frantic drumming on the roof, right above my head. The entire small cabin was surrounded, shaking under the assault. It was a cacophony of fists, a deafening, encircling rhythm that was louder than the storm itself. And underneath the knocking and the wind, I heard a new sound, a low, wet, guttural whispering. It didn't come from one direction. It seemed to emanate from the very walls, seeping into the room like a poison. It was the sound of many voices, talking over each other, a senseless, hungry murmur. It wasn't trying to get my attention anymore. It wanted in. Pure, undiluted terror seized me. I was a ranger, trained in first aid, in wildlife safety, in search and rescue. I was not trained for this. This was something ancient and wrong, something that belonged to the old, dark heart of the wilderness, something the storm had woken up. My eyes fell on the gas lantern in my hand, its mantle blazing with the bright, white light. Light. It was the only thing I had left. It was the opposite of whatever was out there. I stumbled to the center of the room, turned the knob on the lantern, and opened the valve all the way. The flame roared up, brighter than I had ever seen it, blazing with a furious, purifying intensity. I held it high above my head like a torch. "Get back!" I screamed, my voice thin and pathetic against the roaring outside. "Get away from here!" I marched to each window, shoving the blazing light directly against the glass, into the face of the darkness. And it worked. The second the light touched a window, the knocking on that side would cease instantly. The whispering would drop to a furious hiss. I went from window to window, door to window, holding the light high, a one-man procession against the encircling horror. Slowly, the knocking faded away altogether. The hissing was swallowed by the wind, until only the normal sound of the storm remained. I don't know how long I stood there, rotating in the center of the room, holding that lantern until my arms screamed with pain. I did it for hours, until the fuel began to run low and the first gray light of dawn touched the windows. The storm had blown itself out. When the sun was fully up, I dared to unbolt the door and step outside into the deep, pristine silence. The world was buried under a blanket of pure, white snow. It was beautiful and peaceful. There were no footprints around the cabin, no tracks of any kind. But on every single window, on the outside of the glass, was a single gray, smeared handprint. I never put that in my official report. What would I say? I told my boss the storm was a bad one, that a branch had knocked against the window. He didn't question it. I still do my shifts at Lookout Point. It's my job. But I never go up there without checking the weather 3 times. And I always make sure I have enough fuel. Not for the stove, for the light. You've made it to the end, but remember, the story doesn't always end when the video does. If you'd like to support the channel, please like, share, and subscribe. We'll meet again in the dark